Welcome back. The process of applying for food stamps and cash benefits can be an overwhelming process for many New Yorkers. This daunting process is having a negative impact on nonprofit organizations like the West Side Campaign Against Hunger, which aims to distribute healthy food across New York City. The mismanagement of these applications is now causing strain on nonprofits throughout the city who are left to fill in the gaps. The CEO of WSCAH, Greg Silverman, joins me to discuss this growing concern. Greg, thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the West Side Campaign Against Hunger's mission and the communities that it serves?
Yeah, the West Side Campaign Against Hunger has been around about 44 years. It's a food pantry distributing food. Our focus is to make sure all New Yorkers have access with dignity to a choice of healthy food and supportive services. We service customers from all 5 boroughs, about 75,000 customers each and every year.
Now, can you just explain what motivated the founding of the organization in 1979? So, as you mentioned, it's been a very long time.
Yeah. Like many food pantries and anti-hunger organizations in New York City, the 70s were, in New York, were a really rough time. And a lot of anti-hunger organizations started at that time period because they saw the need all over the city for food. And so a lot of religious institutions, community groups came together on the Upper West Side and started distributing food in the basement of a church on 86th Street, which is where we've been based for that entire time.
Now, how has the mission evolved over the years, or has it stayed true to its core mission?
I mean, WSCAH, like most organizations, evolves over time. WSCAH is affectionately named for West Side Campaign Against Hunger. Most pantries demand that customers come to get food at a pantry. It seems sort of obvious in some ways, but we've tried to really flip that model, right? Why would you make people come to food when you can bring the food to people? We want to make sure our customers have access to the food in the way they want it. And so we've been focused over time to really elevate the amount of fresh produce as well. We give out about over 2 million pounds of fresh produce this year. So we're super focused on making healthy options for people.
So can you actually expand on that? So you actually go to, do you go to people's homes or, how does that work?
Well, we're really trying to mimic the market, right? So we have community partners where we distribute with. So you don't need to be a pantry to do great work in your community. So whether it's a church, a senior center, a workforce development group, we can distribute with them great food to their network. We can have hubs where people can pick up their food. We can deliver food to people's homes. We do a lot with New York Presbyterian, giving food to moms with young kids and seniors who might not have the ability to get to one of these locations. So we think there's lots of tools and tactics out there, just like lots of people use to get their groceries and their healthy food.
And also what stands out to me is that comfort and where people feel safe seems to be kind of at the core of this because, going to, a church where people, already go to, there's this sense of security. And I know that unfortunately there is a stigma, associated with going to, a building that just may give out food, especially if people aren't familiar with that. So I think it's amazing that, you're partnering with, these community organizations that people already trust and feel comfortable with. So I think that's pretty amazing. And I think that any organization that kind of does this work should, be working with the community because those are the people, those are the places that people trust the most. So now, could you tell us a little bit more about the organization's continuing efforts to provide the community with healthy food options, particularly through the Roundtable Initiative?
Yeah, so my background is as a chef and restaurant owner. So I'm very much used to, all I want is my customers to have the best food possible. That just happens that now I don't charge my customers, which is much better situation. But I also know that in the wholesale world of getting food, oftentimes pricing is an issue. So what West Side Campaign Against Hunger did is we reached out to now 7 other organizations across the city and started to pool our purchase power. So Met Council, who works across the city, New York Common Pantry, Part of the Solution in the Bronx, and others, we all came together and said, let's buy different products together so we get a better price. So we save money and so that we can drive that money back to serve more people healthy food. So we just realized we're mission focused, all these organizations. So it's just making sure everyone gets the food they need.
Now, here's where, I'm assuming a lot of the concern comes in. Processing rates for SNAP and HRA benefits have dropped considerably in comparison with previous years. Can you elaborate more on this problem and, how it reflects or what it reflects about the city's priorities?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the true issue is, right? Pantries do a great job of distributing food, but many of us as well do benefits enrollment because just giving someone the food doesn't really help lift people up out of long-term food insecurity. So our staff, we have a whole team that signs people up for SNAP and re-enrolls people in SNAP. Now, once we do that work, we're trusted partners of our customers and sign them up and send in the information to the city. The processing rates are abysmal, right? They're nowhere. They're not at the level they're supposed to be, and so our customers are waiting months to get their SNAP approvals, and as well, so therefore our customers are not getting the access to the cash they need to spend to buy more groceries, which means our customers need more food from pantries like the West Side Campaign Against Hunger.
So it kind of like is creating almost like a cycle, right? Would you say?
It's an anti-virtuous cycle,
Right.
right? And in truth, what you're also doing is slowing down the economy, right? Because this is federal dollars that will be spent locally. And so when we stop that process, we're slowing up grocers and bodegas and other shops from getting money in the door that'll help their businesses go. Like we want to keep the economy pushing and make sure our customers get the food they need. And so when we stop processing the applications or slow up the processing time, we're really putting a wrench in the works of feeding New Yorkers in need.
Now, as we also mentioned that it's important to note that the holidays, are upon us, and food and meals, are a huge part of that. How will the process or this like very like daunting process affect so many families who are going to be, expecting to kind of share meals with their other family members?
Yeah, I mean, we know every year the most stressful time of the year for most people, whether they're in food insecure or not, is this holiday season. It should be the most joyous time, but you combine questions of food insecurity, you have the migrant crisis, you have inflation, and you have the inability to get your SNAP benefits on time. You're just constricting people's dollars. Your kids I have small kids. I know my kids are going to want toys for the holidays. You're going to want to spend those dollars for certain things for your family. And therefore, when the SNAP money doesn't show up, you're going to have to make more choices. And you're not going to have that great family experience at the holidays. And so that's what we spend a lot of time on, making sure, doubling down. And, we're going to make sure over 13,000 families get turkeys or pork shoulder or gift cards for vegetarian options because the city and the state and the federal government are not stepping up to fill the need.
Now, only 40% of SNAP applications were processed in a timely manner. How has this impacted your organization, or how will this, especially, with the holidays coming up, how do you see it impacting your organization?
I mean, firstly, yeah, it's important for the organization, but first and foremost is always the customers, right? It's going to impact our customers. 75,000 West Side Campaign Against Hunger customers are affected when benefits don't come in on time. For organizations like West Side Campaign Against Hunger and many others, we're going to end up having to spend more money on food because we have to fill in the gap where the public sector is failing. So we're spending more money, which means the charity sector is filling in a need that should be taken care of by our combined city, state, and federal governments.
Now, what steps have the West Side Campaign Against Hunger taken to adapt and continue to serve communities in the face of prolonged processing times?
I mean, for us, we spend, like I said, more dollars, right? We probably are going to spend 50% more money this year on purchased food, especially purchased fresh produce. Costs are really high, but at the same time, we're not going to let our community go hungry. So we advocate and spend time with city council and talking to elected officials at a federal level as well to try to push things related to SNAP expansion and at the federal level and increase speeding up processing times. But we're not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel as of yet.
That kind of leads into my next question. What steps do you believe New York City should take to ensure timely access to SNAP and HR benefits, are kind of in the works?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me, maybe from my perch. I mean, I know in my own work, we consider like a budget as a moral document. And so where you put your money says a lot about what you believe in. And so if we're not willing to put city dollars to making sure hungry New Yorkers get fed, that's problematic. And I think we need to spend the money to make sure HRA is staffed up with the resources they need to process the applications. It's not that complex.
Now, I also want to bring up the fact that we can't ignore that COVID probably had a significant impact on why so many people did rely on, food pantry and, benefits like that. Can you just talk about maybe what you saw prior to COVID and then, how the need kind of increased after or during?
Well, right. Hunger existed and food insecurity existed and before the pandemic for sure. And in the pandemic, it became even more intense due to the changing nature of jobs and illness and death and so much stresses for families. At the same time, a federal safety net was created or was expanded during COVID that actually decreased food insecurity. We actually built a safety net that worked. And then when we decided, I guess as a country, that the pandemic was technically over, we cut that safety net back. And so, shocking, the numbers of people on food insecure who are food insecure has been rising astronomically. We are twice as busy as we were during the height of the pandemic, which was supposedly the busiest time for hunger in recent memory.
Now, how can the public and policymakers support nonprofits like WSCAH in their mission to combat hunger and food insecurity in New York City?
Yeah, I think people who live in New York City need to reach out to their elected officials at a city level, at a state level, your city council, state assembly, state senators, federal, and reach out to their local offices and say, there's a problem here. My neighbors are going hungry, and we need to push HRA for one to be fund or push the city to fund HRA properly, make sure we're expanding the Community Food Connections program, which will send more food to pantries across the city. And at the same time, we need to ask our elected officials to step up and demand that a budget actually reflects the needs of the community. We're going to go into budget cycle in January again, right? And we start talking about that, and it'll be the time for our elected officials to stand up and say, we need to fully fund HRA. We need to expand Community Food Connections program to get more healthy product to pantries. And we need to give frontline organizations the tools to do their work.
Well, I appreciate you coming here and kind of talking about this because we see, these organizations in our communities, serving our communities, but people don't often think about, the strain that it, what's going on behind the scenes and how it's affecting those communities that are helping us. So I appreciate you, taking the time to come down here and talk to us about this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
To learn more about Greg and his organization efforts to fight against hunger, please go to their website at www.wscah.org. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open right after this.